Wow, hi YouTube. Got contacted by a guy called Guy Emmett. Sent me a message a couple of days ago. Where are you? What are you doing? Why haven't we seen you? The world needs you, which I don't think it does for a moment. Anyway, I'm getting into a little bit of adventure motorcycling. Got a trip planned. Want you to come with me. Okay, thanks for joining me. So Roach is getting into a bit of adventure motorcycling. I've always been a big biker. I've had lots of bikes over the last 20, 30, 40 years. This is what I intend to do my adventure motorcycling on. I did toy with the idea of taking my BMW Urban GS, and I kind of specced that bike. You know, I really pushed the boat out because it's going to be, I kind of sold it to my wife on, it's going to be my last motorcycle, you know, so really pushed the boat out on it, went for the brushed aluminium tank, had the fairing and the front mudguard sprayed the same colour as the bike, went for the engine bars, cylinder head protectors, went for the brown leather seat, and a crazy funky number plate. So I really pushed the boat out on that bike, thinking that's going to be the last bike I have, and I do hope to keep hold of it, pass it on to my youngest son, so you know, when motorcycling is well and truly behind me, you know, Jake will have something in the garage that perhaps the old man used to enjoy. That's the plan anyway. The adventure motorcycling bug kind of got me, and started to look around at what was about, the budget that I had, you know, how much money I wanted to spend and all the rest of it. And this bike really leapt out at me. So this bike is a Royal Enfield Himalayan. This is the kind of fourth, fifth generation of this motorcycle. Made in India. Needless to say, it's a kind of dual sport adventure overland motorcycle. And if you look anywhere on YouTube, you'll find people, you know, traveling around the world on it, literally driving in the Himalayas. And the first, second, third generation of this motorcycle didn't have great write-ups, you know, so made in India, the quality control had issues. As the bike started to get distributed through Europe, out to America, all around the world, the quality control issues started to be addressed because there was compliance that Royal Enfield had to get on board with. This is the latest generation, 2019 Royal Enfield Himalayan, and still a very, very basic motorcycle. So it is 411cc, single cylinder, it's got a long stroke on it. Total weight of the bike's 191 kilos, little over 2.2 meters long. So it's a bike getting on for about 200, 240 pounds. It's got a 15 litre tank. This bike will do 70 to 80 miles to the gallon, so it's pretty good on economy. It really depends how you drive it and where you're driving it, determine what sort of you know, precise miles per gallon you're going to get, but that's pretty good tank range. What I've done with this motorcycle is I've come up with a little system where I fitted 4 litres of additional fuel. So this motorcycle, without additional fuel, probably looking at 200, 235 miles to a tank of fuel. With the additional 4 litres, I think I'm probably looking at 300 miles as a tank range, and that just means I can really be out there with any other adventure motorcycles on the market with a 300 mile tank range. So this bike then is the latest 2019. It's got electronic fuel injection, 21-inch front tyre, 17-inch rear tyre. They're 90/90 and 90/120 kind of all-terrain tyres on it. Initially, you know, not great reviews about the front brake. Front brake is a 300mm 2-pot caliper on the front, and like I say, hasn't historically, it's never had a great write-up on the front brake on this bike. you do need to take a big handful of front brake, as opposed to when I ride my BMW, which is a state-of-the-art bike. That's kind of 2 fingers on the front brake, and that will give you all the braking you need. The rear brake on this bike, absolutely brilliant. 240mm disc, single pot on the back, but rear braking is absolutely peachy. 5-speed. Without going into, you know, the minutiae, I think that's the guts of this bike really. Very simple technology. You should be able to repair this bike pretty much, you know, by the side of the road anywhere in the world. There were a few issues with the clutch when the bike first came out. As the clutch started to wear, there was a kind of packing washer in the clutch mechanism that didn't allow the thrust bearing to operate properly when the clutch started to wear, and let's say about sort of 8,000 to 12,000 miles on it, and so people were breaking down in the middle of nowhere with no clutch. But that has been kind of redesigned and addressed, and now pretty much bulletproof motorcycle. The downside on this motorcycle compared to the Japanese and the German, European bikes, service intervals on this bike are pretty low. So the first service is at 300 miles, and I think that's really a kind of spanner check, and just make sure that everything's tickety-boo and everything's nice and tight as you go forward. Thereafter, service intervals can be quite low. I've heard people say, you know, that they've serviced the bike at 3,000 miles, at 6,000 miles, but definitely, you know, way before 8,000. Whereas on my BMW, you know, 8,000 miles or one major service a year, that's it, you know. So so that's the kind of Achilles heel of basic technology. You've got to stay on top of it, that way it stays reliable for you. But this is the Royal Enfield Himalayan. This is the thing I'm going to be touring Britain on, bringing it a bit closer. So in an attempt to keep the cost down, I've gone for the Lomo Dry Bags, and they've got pretty good capacity. You know, I think there's probably 10, 12 litres in those bags. What I've done is actually kind of bolted them straight onto the frame, so they're kind of permanently fixed. But my idea really is decent first aid kit and water. My intention is to kind of camp out as I'm travelling, so I'm going to try to be completely sort of self-sufficient on my trip. So it'll be a combination of sort of motorcycle adventure, bushcraft survival, wild camping. So like I say, it's a pretty spacious bag, just a little dry bag, roll top, and I reckon there's 10 litres there. Don't remember off the top of my head what the capacity was, but one of the advantages of the Royal Enfield Himalayan is it does come with these frame mounted bags. Wondering what this is the best visor wipe in the world. So it's a tennis ball with the top cut off, cable tied onto the handlebars, bit of sponge. Obviously when it starts raining it gets wet, or failing that, leave a little drop of water in the bottom of it before you leave home. That's the greatest visor wipe in the world, people. What I kind of took a fancy to, and you used to see a lot of front racks on dual sport bikes. This front rack came off of a Honda monkey bike, and I modified it to fit the Himalayan. My intention really is to put here kind of a big sort of 3x3 bushcraft tarp, something like that. So when I arrive wherever I am going, if it's pouring with rain, I simply take the tarp, I take the bungees off of my luggage, instantly put the tarp up, me and the bike underneath the tarp. That's where we start from. So we're trying to have an environment from which we can succeed. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. I'm going to be taking a two-man tent. Going to invest in my own comfort overnight. If I'm going to be on a motorcycle during the day, I've got to sleep well, so I'm hoping to invest in my comfort. Not really about roughing it, unless of course I choose to or I absolutely have to. But really liked that little front rack, and went out of my way to find one, modified it slightly, had to kind of manufacture this arm, and weld it up, blah blah blah. But I kind of rebuilt it, made it fit. I think it'll be an asset. Little front rack, not loads of weight on it, but I think that's going to come in really handy. So anyone that knows me knows I'm a big fan of Olight. They've helped me out with a little bit of sponsorship, and there are a couple of other people in the wind that might come on board to get Roach off on his trip. Not sure the capacity of these panniers, but they're about half the size of the ones on my BMW. They make a purpose-built sort of Cordura pouch storage system for the lid of panniers. This always ends up being a little bit of a dead space. But they are so expensive. They're sort of 25 to 50 pounds, for the purpose-made pouch that goes in there. And they're a great bit of kit, but it was just kind of more money than I had. I can't claim that this idea is mine. I saw it on the tube. But got these kind of elastic nets from Amazon. They were about £10, and I just epoxied the Velcro into the lid, and then they just Velcro in place. But they're really good for a bit of additional storage. Panniers are aluminium, and they lock, which I really like. I always have an unease about soft luggage, that someone's just going to turn up with a knife, cut a couple of straps and walk off with everything you own in the world. So everyone that knows me knows that Roach is a bit of a mad scientist, and this thing here, it's literally, believe it or not, 2 tins of dog food, one with the top and the bottom cut off. I epoxied them together, covered them in black masking tape, gave the lick of paint. In the bottom of the tin there's a piece of sponge, and what that is a mount for my monopod. It's going to help me film the trip for you. So here's my monopod. I'm going to be taking a tripod, I'm going to be taking a camera bag, but monopod literally just fits in there. Got on a kind of elastic bungee type setup, and that is going to just give us some funky camera angles. It's going to be a kind of over the shoulder shot, or I can change the elevation of it for you, but that's basically what that tin can on the back is all about. So that's the kind of over the shoulder shot that we're going to get from the monopod as it kind of comes off the back of the bike. But I'm hoping that turns out to be quite interesting footage for you, and hopefully it'll make you feel like you're sitting on Roach's shoulder. Should get some pretty interesting camera angles. Like I say, I went for the Casso V50 Pros as a kind of camera that I could afford, that had a pretty good write-up, and that's what I'm going to be filming our trip with. So it was quite a steep learning curve for me. I had to do a lot of research on how you film motorcycle adventures, where to put the cameras, what sort of footage you get, how you cope with the sound. You can have the greatest pictures in the world, but if the sound is rubbish, chances are no one's going to watch it. I'm all about trying to make films that are entertaining and of interest. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit more gen about the trip. Really, I'm planning to circumnavigate the UK. So I'm going to call the trip the Sea on my left. Going to be going clockwise around the UK. The trip's going to start at Lizard Point. From there, I'm going to go down. I'm going to camp, wild camp, at or around the point. Next day I'm going to get up, the trip's going to start for real, so I'll be heading down to Land's End to have the compulsory photograph taken with the sign. From there on, really, I'm keeping the sea on my left. I've got a few landmarks that I've mapped out travelling up the west coast of the British Isles. Really, I want to go to Brecon, and when I'm in Brecon, I want to walk up Pen y Fan, you know, and again, we'll camp somewhere near the Fan that night, and then head off the next day. The next day, the next location that I'd quite like to get to is the Cheddar Gorge, you know, so going to have a little diversion, going to go to the Cheddar Gorge. Same again, we'll find somewhere to camp and spend the day there, having a good look round, and so on and so on. So from Cheddar Gorge, we're going back to the kind of west coast. We're going to be going up the coast, and we're going to end up in Snowdonia. So same sort of thing there, Snowdonia. Then we're off to Lake Windermere. Then we're off to Fort William. Then we're off to John O'Groats. So that's my kind of trip up the west coast. But it's also going to be full of kind of days out. You know, once I get halfway up the country, really, I'm already thinking, do you know what, it'd be really nice to do coast to coast. So we could start on the west coast, you know, put our toe in the water, and it's only 190 miles, I think, at the kind of narrowest point, the UK. So we could use that day to kind of zip across to the east coast and have the same again, you know, put our foot in the water, and in a day, you know, we've had that particular journey. The other thing that I want to do is, because Roach videos have always been kind of renowned for a bit of cooking, so I push the boat out. Like I say, this pannier really is going to be the kitchen, and I'm going to be sort of top heavy on pots and pans and things to cook with, and this one is going to be the larder, so I've got a big cool box. But the idea really is to find good ingredients while we're travelling during the day. So let's say we find a fishmonger or a boat coming in when we're on the coast, or maybe we find a good butcher and we buy a lovely something, and then that evening, God willing, we can park the bike up wherever we're going to stop, and the idea is to get where we're going by about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and cook a really nice evening meal. Now sometimes that will be done in a kind of bushcraft style, where I'll use a ground oven, you know, dig a hole, foot deep, foot square, bake bread in it, that sort of thing, you know. But the idea is to cook a really nice dinner, evening meal, from the ingredients that we come across during the course of the day. And then we'll have to camp out, you know. Like I say, I've got a couple of different 2-man tents. I've got I'm taking a 3-metre square basher. So it is going to be kind of wild camping, it is going to be bushcraft and survival, but it's also going to be adventure motorcycling. You know, if the weather's really, really bad, I can't turn around and say, hand on my heart, I'm not going to find a B&B or a hotel somewhere and go over all of my admin. So let's say I end up in a hotel or a B&B every 3 days, but that'll be an opportunity to just go over my kit, make sure it's all serviceable still, come up with a list of things maybe that I need to replenish, and that's my trip, you know. So that's the plan. They are the little kind of things that I've already picked out that I'd like to do: Lizard Point, Land's End, Cheddar Gorge, Snowdonia, Fort William, John O'Groats. I think that's kind of the west side of the UK trip. And like I say, you know, what I'd like you to do is to come with me. So I think I'm going to wrap this up here. Next video is going to be on the kit that I'm taking, so I'll break down all of the kit and equipment that I've been poring over and making. I've made quite a lot of bits and pieces, and show you exactly what I'm going to take and exactly what I'm going to do with it. But over the last kind of month or so, I've done nothing but play with, you know, wood burning stoves, dual fuel systems. Ultimately, I think I've decided that I'm going to have a petrol cooker, because I've got a petrol motorcycle, I've got spare petrol that I'm carrying for the bike, so it makes sense to have a petrol stove, you know. So stuff like that. I'll explain my thinking as I get the kit and equipment out and we start packing this thing up, and getting nearer and nearer and nearer the off. But I think this is where I say please thumbs up, share, like, subscribe, and if you're watching on Facebook, please follow. As always, any comments, love to hear them. Back soon.